One afternoon, as I was tending to my garden, an older, weary-looking dog wandered into my yard. His well-groomed coat, sturdy collar, and comfortably full belly told me he belonged to someone who cared for him well. He approached me with a slow, confident gait, gave a gentle wag of his tail, and pressed his head into my palm for a scratch. After a moment of quiet companionship, he strolled past me, walked straight into my house as if he owned the place, found a cozy spot in the hallway, curled up, and promptly fell asleep. An hour later, he woke up, stretched lazily, and padded toward the door. I opened it, and without so much as a backward glance, he trotted off. The next day, like clockwork, he returned. A polite nod, as much as a dog can nod, a few pats on the head, and then he resumed his nap in the same spot. This became a routine. Day after day, week after week, my mysterious guest arrived, took his scheduled nap, and then left as if nothing had happened. Curiosity got the better of me, so I decided to send a message. I scribbled a note, pinned it to his collar, and sent him on his way. I'd love to know who this wonderful dog belongs to. Are you aware that he visits my house every afternoon for a nap? The next day, my sleepy friend arrived as usual, but this time there was a new note pinned to his collar. I unfolded it and read, "He lives with my wife. She talks nonstop. He's just trying to catch up on sleep. Can I come with him tomorrow?" A group of husbands sat together at a cafe, sipping coffee and sharing their daily struggles. The conversation soon turned to how their wives had a unique way of warning them whenever they got on their nerves. The pilot sighed, "Whenever I argue, my wife just looks at me and says, 'Don't fly too high, mister, or you'll crash.'" The teacher chuckled, "Oh, that's nothing. My wife always says, 'Don't try to teach me, I'm not your student.'" The painter shook his head. "Well, mine simply picks up a brush and threatens, 'I'll paint you into a corner if you don't behave.'" The washerman groaned, "At least you guys don't have to hear 'I'll wash you like dirty laundry' every time you argue." The actor smirked. "My wife keeps it short. Don't act too much, I can see through you." The dentist grinned. "My wife doesn't even joke. She just says, 'One more word and I'll break your teeth.'" The accountant sighed. "Mine's all about discipline. Keep your actions accountable or I'll audit your life." The engineer chuckled. "Whenever I mess up, my wife warns, 'I'll loosen all your parts if you don't fix your attitude.'" The architect nodded. "Same here. She tells me, 'Stay straight or I'll redesign your entire structure.'" Just then, the marketing executive leaned forward with a smirk. "Well, gentlemen, you've got it easy. My wife simply says if you keep talking too much, I'll list you on OLX and sell you off." It was Mother's Day, and the family gathered around the dinner table for a special meal. The kids were laughing, the food was delicious, but something was off. The mother, usually the life of the conversation, sat quietly, poking at her plate with a distant look. Sensing the tension, her husband glanced at her and asked, "Everything okay?" She gave a small smile and replied, "Nothing." He wasn't convinced. "Come on, what's wrong?" She sighed, setting down her fork. "Do you really want to know?" The table fell silent as she continued. "For 15 years, I've cooked, cleaned, packed lunches, helped with homework, and kept this house running. And today, on Mother's Day, not even a simple thank you from you." Her husband leaned back in his chair and scoffed. "Why should I? In all these years, I've never gotten a single Father's Day gift." She stared at him for a moment, then calmly took a sip of her drink before delivering the knockout punch. "Yes," she said, "but I'm their real mother." In a quiet Cincinnati courtroom, an elderly woman stood before the judge, her frail hands clasped in front of her. At 89 years old, she didn't look like the usual suspect, but here she was, charged with shoplifting. The judge peered over his glasses and asked, "Ma'am, what exactly did you steal?" "A can of peaches," she admitted softly. "And why did you steal it?" She sighed. "I was hungry, Your Honor." The judge nodded, his expression softening just a bit. "How many peaches were in the can?" "6," she replied. The judge stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Well then, I'm afraid I have to give you 6 days in jail, one for each peach." Just as the gavel was about to come down, a voice piped up from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor, may I say something?" It was the woman's husband, an old man who had been sitting quietly until now. The judge turned to him. "Go ahead." The old man cleared his throat, glanced at his wife, and then said with a perfectly straight face, "She also stole a can of peas." It was a beautiful afternoon on the golf course. Sun shining, birds chirping, the perfect day for a relaxing round. That is, until Jack, an enthusiastic but somewhat clumsy golfer, took a sharp turn and accidentally overturned his golf buggy. Before he could even dust himself off, a voice called out from a nearby villa. "Are you okay? What's your name?" Jack looked up to see Elizabeth, a stunning woman with a dazzling smile, leaning over her balcony. She was clearly an avid golfer herself, dressed in a stylish golf outfit that made him momentarily forget about his predicament. "I'm Jack, and yeah, I think I'm okay," he replied, trying to regain his composure. Elizabeth flashed a warm smile. "Jack, forget about your troubles. Come to my villa, rest for a while, and we'll get your card up later." Jack hesitated. "That's really kind of you, but I don't think my wife would like it." "Oh, come on," Elizabeth urged, her voice as smooth as the greens. She was very pretty, very persuasive, and Jack was weak. "Well, okay," he finally said, "but my wife won't like it." Inside the villa, Elizabeth poured him a generous brandy and even gave him a few private putting lessons. Jack had to admit he was feeling much better. He leaned back, relaxed, and let out a contented sigh. "Thanks, Elizabeth, I really appreciate this, but I just know my wife is going to be really upset." Elizabeth giggled, playfully waving her hand. "Oh, don't be silly, she won't know anything. By the way, where is she?" Jack took a deep breath, sighed again, and pointed outside. "Under the cart." For more than 60 years, John and Margaret had shared a life filled with love, laughter, and unwavering companionship. They had no secrets between them, except for one small mystery. At the top of Margaret's closet sat an old shoebox, carefully tucked away. From the very beginning of their marriage, she had made John promise never to open it, never to ask about it. Being a man of his word, John had respected her wishes. Decades passed, children grew, and life went on, the shoebox gathering dust, along with the years. Then one day, Margaret fell gravely ill. The doctor's prognosis was bleak. As John sat by her bedside, holding her frail hand, he knew it was time to settle their affairs. With a heavy heart, he retrieved the shoebox and brought it to her. "My love," he said gently, "I think it's time I finally know what's inside." Margaret nodded with a small, knowing smile. "Yes, dear. Open it." John carefully lifted the lid, and what he found stunned him. Inside were 2 delicate hand-crocheted dolls and a stack of neatly bundled cash, totaling an astonishing $95,000. He looked at his wife in confusion. "Margaret, what is this?" She chuckled softly. "Before we were married, my grandmother shared her secret to a happy marriage. She told me, whenever you get angry with your husband, don't argue, just keep quiet and crochet a doll." John's eyes welled with tears. He swallowed the lump in his throat, staring at the 2 little dolls. Only 2. In over 60 years of marriage, Margaret had only been angry with him twice. He reached for her hand, overwhelmed with love. "Oh, darling," he whispered, "that explains the dolls. But what about all this money?" Margaret gave him a mischievous grin. "Oh, that," she said. "That's the money I made from selling the other dolls." "Hi, Uncle Tom. I'm a lady aged 26. I left my husband with the maid and my baby at home. I drove for just about 2 kilometers from home, and my car engine started to overheat, so I had to turn back to get another. When I got home, I found my husband in bed with our maid. I don't know what to do now. Please help me." From Anonymous. Uncle Tom's reply: "Dear Anonymous, overheating of the engine after such a short distance can be caused by problems associated with the radiator. You need to check the oil and water level in your engine before you start your journey. You must also make sure your car is serviced regularly to avoid problems in the future. Hope this helps. A young man eager to learn the ways of success approached a wealthy old gentleman at a grand estate party. "Sir," he asked with admiration, "how did you make your fortune?" The old man leaned back in his chair, stroked his chin, and smiled. "Ah, son, it was 1932, the height of the Great Depression. I was down to my last nickel. But I didn't give up. I took that nickel and bought a single apple. Then I spent the entire day polishing it until it shone like gold. That evening I sold it for 10 cents. The young man nodded, intrigued. "The next morning," the old man continued, "I took that 10 cents and bought 2 apples. I polished them all day and sold them for 20 cents. The young man's eyes widened. I kept doing this day after day. By the end of a month, through sheer hard work and determination, I had accumulated an astonishing fortune of $1.37. The young man gasped, hanging on every word. "And then what happened?" The old man chuckled. "Well, then my wife's father died and left us $2 million. For weeks, my wife had been dropping hints, subtle at first, then not so subtle, that our lawnmower needed fixing. "Maybe you could look at the mower today," she'd suggest sweetly. But somehow, there was always something more pressing on my to-do list. The shed needed organizing. The boat needed a little maintenance. And of course, my homebrew wasn't going to make itself. One afternoon, I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed something strange in the yard. There, in the overgrown grass, sat my wife, with a pair of sewing scissors. She was snipping away at the lawn, one tiny blade of grass at a time. I stood there for a moment, watching in silence. She didn't look up, didn't say a word, just kept clipping, determined and patient. I knew this was my moment to respond, so I walked into the house, grabbed something, and returned a minute later, with a toothbrush. Handing it to her, I said, "When you're done with the grass, you might as well sweep the driveway. The doctors say I'll walk again, but they also say I'll always have a limp." Excitement buzzed in the air as a young couple met with their pastor to finalize the details of their upcoming wedding. "Would you prefer a traditional ceremony?" the pastor asked. "Or something more contemporary?" The bride and groom exchanged a glance before nodding in agreement. "Contemporary," they said. The pastor smiled. "Contemporary it is." Finally, the big day arrived, but so did the biggest storm of the year. Torrential rain flooded the streets, and the groom found himself rerouting his drive to the church. As he trudged through knee-deep water, he rolled up his pant legs, desperate to keep his trousers dry. By the time he arrived, drenched and breathless, his best man grabbed him by the arm and rushed him inside. The ceremony had already begun. With no time to adjust, the groom was hurried straight to the altar, standing proudly beside his bride. The pastor leaned in, whispering softly, "Pull down your pants." The groom's eyes widened in horror. Reverend?" he stammered, glancing nervously at his bride. "I've changed my mind. I think I'd prefer the traditional service." After 25 years of marriage, I found myself reflecting on how life had changed. One evening, as my wife and I relaxed in our beautiful home, I decided to share my thoughts. "Honey," I said, stretching out on our luxurious bed, "do you remember where we started? We had a tiny, run-down apartment, a clunky old car, and a sofa bed that left us both sore in the morning. We watched TV on a 10-inch black and white screen. But you know what? Every night I got to fall asleep next to a stunning, young, 25-year-old blonde." My wife nodded, her expression unreadable. I continued, oblivious to the impending storm. "Now look at us. We have a beautiful house, a fancy car, a king-size bed, and a massive plasma screen TV. But I'm sleeping next to a 50-year-old woman." I sighed dramatically. "It seems like you haven't really held up your end of the deal." She smiled sweetly, always a bad sign. "You're right, dear," she said, patting my hand. "So here's what we'll do. You go find yourself a hot 25-year-old blonde, and I'll make sure you're once again living in a tiny apartment, driving a clunky old car and sleeping on a sofa bed. After a long day at work, Dave trudged through the front door, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed into his favorite chair. Without so much as a hello, he grabbed the remote, turned on the TV, and called out to his wife. "Quick, bring me a beer before it starts." His wife, Lisa, paused mid-step, eyeing him suspiciously. But with a small sigh, she fetched him a beer. Dave chugged it down, and before even setting the empty bottle on the table, called out again. "Quick, another beer, it's gonna start!" Lisa's brow furrowed, but she went to the fridge and grabbed him another. This time, she slammed it down in front of him. Dave barely noticed. He took a deep gulp, then wiped his mouth. "Hurry, one more beer, it's about to start, any second." That was it. Lisa's patience snapped like a dry twig. "You lazy, ungrateful bastard!" she exploded. "You walk in here, plop yourself down like a king, don't even greet me and expect me to run around after you? Do you think I sit around all day twiddling my thumbs? I cook, I clean, I do the laundry, and—" Dave let out a deep sigh, sank back into his chair, and muttered, "Oh, shit, it started." In the dim glow of candlelight, the scent of incense curled through the air as Laura sat across from the fortune teller. The old woman, draped in flowing scarves, peered into a crystal ball, her expression darkening. She exhaled deeply before speaking. "There's no easy way to tell you this," she murmured, her voice heavy with foreboding. "So, I will be blunt. Prepare yourself, my dear. You will soon be a widow. Your husband will meet a violent and terrible end before this year is over." Laura's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. The flickering candlelight cast long, eerie shadows on the walls, mirroring the swirling thoughts in her mind. She swallowed hard, inhaled deeply, and tried to steady herself. Then, after a long pause, she lifted her gaze to the fortune teller's solemn face and asked, with quiet determination, "Will I be acquitted?" After spending a week away on business just before Christmas, Tom decided he ought to bring his wife a little gift, something to show he was thinking of her. At the department store, he approached the cosmetics counter, where a clerk greeted him with a polite smile. "I'd like to get my wife some perfume," Tom said. The clerk nodded and pulled out an elegant bottle. "This one is lovely, just $50. Tom frowned. That's a bit much." Without missing a beat, the clerk set the bottle aside and presented a smaller one. "This one is only $30. Tom pursed his lips. "Still a little pricey." Now visibly unimpressed, the clerk reached under the counter and produced a tiny vial. "This one is just $15. Tom let out an exasperated sigh. "Look," he said, "I was hoping to see something really cheap." Without hesitation, the clerk reached under the counter again and handed him a small object. Tom blinked. It was a mirror. Johnny wakes up with a pounding headache and a stomach full of regret. His memory of last night completely wiped. Groaning, he reaches for his dressing gown on the floor and shrugs it on. As he slips his hand into a pocket, he feels something unfamiliar. He pulls it out. A bra. His heart sinks. Oh. What happened last night? Still groggy, he shuffles towards the bathroom, slipping his other hand into the second pocket. This time he pulls out a pair of knickers. Panic sets in. What have I done? It must have been one hell of a party. Bracing himself, he steps into the bathroom and looks in the mirror. That's when he notices a tiny string hanging from his lips. His breath catches, his mind races, and then with a silent prayer he thinks, "Dear God, please let this be a tea bag." It was a quiet afternoon when Joe found himself strolling along an old railway track, lost in thought. One careless step, and suddenly his foot was wedged tight between the rails. He yanked at it, twisted, pulled, nothing. It was stuck fast. Then in the distance, he heard it, the faint rhythmic clatter of an approaching train. His heart pounded as he turned to see the locomotive bearing down on him, growing larger by the second. Panic set in. He did the only thing he could think of. "God, please, get my foot out of these tracks and I swear I'll quit drinking." Nothing happened. The train thundered closer. Okay, I'll quit drinking and cussing. Just help me out here." Still stuck. The rails trembled under the weight of the oncoming train. "All right! Drinking, cussing, and smoking. I'll give it all up. Just please help me!" The whistle screamed. The ground shook. The train was nearly on him. Okay. Drinking, cussing, smoking, and sleeping around. I'll stop it all. Just get me out of here." At that exact moment, his foot miraculously popped free. He tumbled to the ground, rolling just in time as the train roared past, missing him by inches. Breathless, he lay there for a moment, staring up at the sky. Then he sat up, dusted himself off, and glanced toward the heavens. "Thanks anyway, God," he muttered. "I got it myself." In a small Scottish village, just a day before Christmas Eve, old Angus picked up the phone and dialed his son in London. "Lad, I hate to ruin your day," he began with a heavy sigh, "but I have to tell you, your mother and I are divorcing. 45 years of misery is enough." The line went silent for a moment before his son exploded. "Dad, what are you talking about? You and Mom can't just get divorced. We can't stand the sight of each other any longer," Angus grumbled. "We're sick of arguing, and I'm sick of talking about it. If you care so much, call your sister in Leeds and tell her." Before Angus could say another word, his son had already hung up. Moments later, the phone rang again. This time, it was his daughter. "Like hell you're getting divorced!" she shrieked. "You don't do a single thing until I get there. I'm calling my brother, and we'll both be home tomorrow. Do you hear me? Tomorrow! Don't move a muscle!" With that, she slammed the phone down. Angus hung up, turned to his wife with a satisfied smile, and said, "Done. They're coming for Christmas, and they're paying their own way." It was a quiet evening in an upscale restaurant. Candlelight flickered, soft music played, and at one particular table a man and a woman enjoyed their meal, or so it seemed. Nearby, a waitress was taking another table's order when she caught sight of something unusual. The man at the table was slowly sliding down in his chair. Inch by inch, he sank lower and lower, until finally he disappeared completely under the table. Strangely, the woman sitting across from him remained perfectly composed, sipping her wine as if nothing had happened. The waitress finished taking her order, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Concerned, she walked over to the woman's table and leaned in slightly. "Pardon me, ma'am," she said hesitantly, "but I think your husband just slid under the table." The woman finally looked up unfazed and gave a firm reply. "No, he didn't. My husband just walked in the door." "Dear Abby, I've never written to you before, but I really need your advice on what could be a crucial decision. For some time now, I've suspected that my wife has been cheating on me. The signs are there, the phone rings, but when I answer, the caller hangs up. She's been going out with the girls more often. But when I ask who they are, she always brushes it off with, "Just some friends from work. You don't know them." I stay up late to watch for her taxi, but she never actually arrives in one. Instead, I hear a car pull away from around the corner before she strolls down the driveway. Why not get dropped off at the door? Maybe she was never in a taxi at all. One time, I casually picked up her phone to check the time, and she completely lost it, yelling that I should never touch her phone and accusing me of checking up on her. I've never confronted her about my suspicions. Maybe I didn't want to know the truth, but last night I decided to finally investigate. She went out again, so I came up with a plan. I'd park my Harley-Davidson next to the garage and crouch behind it, giving myself a clear view of the entire street when she returned. I was all set, hidden, waiting, watching, when I suddenly noticed something disturbing. The valve covers on my engine seemed to be leaking a little oil, so now my real question is this something I can fix myself? Or should I take it back to the dealer? A weary judge sat in his chambers, rubbing his temples as he interviewed a woman about her pending divorce. "Ma'am," he began patiently, "what are the grounds for your divorce?" The woman smiled. "About 4 acres, with a nice little house in the middle and a stream running by." The judge sighed. "No, I mean, what is the foundation of this case?" "Oh," she said cheerfully, "concrete, brick, and mortar." The judge took a deep breath. "Let's try this again. What are your relations like?" "Well," she mused, I have an aunt and uncle in town, and my husband's parents live nearby, too. The judge clenched his jaw. Do you have a real grudge? Oh, no, she assured him. We have a two-car carport. Never saw much use for a grudge. His patience wearing thin, the judge pressed on. Is there any infidelity in your marriage? Yes, actually. She nodded. Both my son and daughter have stereo sets. We don't always like their music, but yes, we have infidelity. The judge exhaled slowly. Ma'am, does your husband ever beat you up? Yes, about twice a week, she said matter-of-factly. He gets up earlier than I do. At this point, the judge threw up his hands. Lady, why do you even want a divorce? Oh, I don't want a divorce, she said, shaking her head. I've never wanted a divorce. She leaned in conspiratorially. It's my husband. He says he can't communicate with me. The mother-in-law arrived home from a long afternoon at the mall, bags in hand, only to find her son-in-law furiously stuffing clothes into a suitcase. His face was red with rage, his movements frantic. Alarmed, she rushed to his side. What on earth is going on? She asked. He spun around, eyes blazing. You want to know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. I sent an email to my wife this morning, letting her know I was coming home early from my business trip. I walk through the door, head to our bedroom, and what do I find? He threw up his hands. Your daughter, my wife, in our bed, with another man. Her voice cracked with fury. I've had it. This is unforgivable. Our marriage is over. The mother-in-law gasped, but quickly composed herself. Now, let's not jump to conclusions, she said soothingly. There has to be a logical explanation. My daughter would never do such a thing. Let me talk to her. With that, she disappeared down the hallway, leaving the man fuming. A few tense minutes later, she reappeared, her expression completely changed, calm, even cheerful. I told you, she said with a reassuring smile. There's a perfectly simple explanation. She never got your email. A jealous husband, consumed with suspicion, hired a private detective to track his wife's movements. He didn't just want a written report, he wanted undeniable proof. Video evidence. A week later, the detective returned with the footage. The two men sat down together, the husband leaning forward anxiously as the detective pressed play. The grainy footage flickered to life. The husband watched as his wife met another man in the park. He saw them laughing, sharing jokes, completely at ease with one another. The next scene showed them at an outdoor cafe, smiling over coffee, lost in conversation. Then, the nightclub. A dimly lit dance floor where the two swayed to the music, his wife's face glowing with happiness. Scene after scene played out. More laughter, more fun, more moments of pure joy. The husband sat back, shaking his head in disbelief. I just can't believe this, he muttered. The detective sighed. What's not to believe? It's all right there on the screen. The husband turned to him, eyes wide. I can't believe my wife could be so much fun. An elderly couple, married for over 6 decades, met an unfortunate end in a car accident. He was 87, she was 82. Throughout their long life together, the wife had been fiercely devoted to healthy living. Strict diets, no sugar, low fat, plenty of greens. She made sure they exercised, avoided red meat, and stayed away from anything remotely indulgent. When they arrived in heaven, a shimmering light welcomed them into their new existence. An angel guided them to their personal paradise, a breathtaking estate with a lush garden and a championship-level golf course. Beyond the course stood a grand clubhouse, open 24/7, serving the most decadent food and drinks imaginable, all free. There was satellite TV, snooker tables, and live entertainment every night. Just a short stroll away, a golden beach stretched into the horizon, always kissed by the sun. It was beautifully attended by radiant bronzed women, completely naked, laughing and frolicking in the waves. The old man took it all in, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open in awe. He turned to his wife, shaking his head. You dozy cow, he muttered. If it wasn't for you and your bloody health food, I could have been here 20 years ago. A young couple, freshly married and glowing with excitement, returned from their honeymoon to settle into their new home. They spent days unpacking their wedding gifts, silverware neatly stored away, artwork carefully hung, and more intimate items tucked into their bedroom drawers. Life was blissful, and the routine of newlywed life had just begun when a week later, an unexpected envelope arrived in the mail. Inside, they found 2 tickets to an exclusive sold-out theater show, an event so popular that securing seats was nearly impossible. No sender's name, no return address, just a small slip of paper with a single cryptic line. Guess who sent them? Excited by the mystery, the couple spent the following days playing a delightful guessing game, running through every possibility: family, friends, maybe even a generous colleague. Try as they might, they couldn't figure it out. Regardless, they dressed in their finest and headed off to the theater, enjoying a spectacular evening of entertainment. Returning home late that night, still debating the identity of their mysterious benefactor, they opened their front door and froze. Their house had been completely stripped. Every piece of furniture, every treasured possession, gone. And there on the bare dining table sat a single sheet of paper, scrawled in the same handwriting as before were 4 chilling words. Well, now you know.